Welcome to Robo Success, the podcast that loves robots, marketing, and success. Here we spotlight the innovators building the future of robotics. Hit subscribe, share with a friend, and let's get started.
Hello, welcome to the Robo Success Podcast. Today I have my co-host, Andy Diepen. How are you, Andy?
I am doing great, Jessica, and I'm excited for this conversation. Who do we have for a guest today?
We don't have a guest today. Today is a
Ah,
conversation between you and I. And I think we always have a lot of topics to discuss. And one of the topics lately I have been thinking about is, when a company is building a robotics, asking the why, right? Sometimes we all are full of ideas. I always tell to everybody, I wake up with at least 3 or 4 different ideas. You know this. Um, and I think everybody have great ideas. But when you start building a company, the why. Why are you building a robotics company?
Yep, I love it. And so this was, popularized by Simon Sinek, had a book, Start with Why. And I think this is important, not just for robotics companies, but for all companies, right? And it's deeper than your strategy or, your marketing or anything you do. It's really why are you doing what you're doing? Why does your business exist? What value does it bring? And it's related to your company's strategy. And so a good understanding of why helps you set your direction, helps you align with your clients, with your employees, and it makes running your business easier if you understand the why of your business. Um, so I wanted to start with a couple of, classic examples. We look at Apple, right? Apple has been a very successful business. Their why is very strong, where their why does Apple exist? They're empowering creativity and challenging the status quo, right? And that is it's bigger than their products, it's bigger than their sales and their whatever revenue they make. And it's a mission that aligns with their entire company as well as their customer base. And that's why they've been so successful. I also see companies that don't have a good why. And if your why is, well, I can make a whole lot of money, that's very internally focused, and no one else can align to that mission except for yourself. So I think understanding why your business exists is very important.
Yep, absolutely. And I think is where it comes the real dilemma founder, right? Are you having a purpose or are you following a marketing trend, right? Suddenly you see that everybody is developing some kind of robot and it's getting a lot of money out there. And you say, oh, I know how to make this. Let me jump and make it. But you are not coming with a real purpose and a real solution that later translate on that. And it's very easy that then, of course, VC investors or partner start telling you what you should be doing, and you start switching that purpose a lot instead of focusing of why I'm making this, right? What is the problem that I'm really trying to solve? What is really out there that my company can do better than the others, or why am I different, right? And this is one of the reasons I see why a company can be more successful than others. And you say it, right? One, if you are having really a mission driven and a real purpose, then of course you have also a team that joins that mission. But if you don't have it well defined, you are the only one making it happen. And you can see it also in the companies where they have actually a lot of moves and changes between their team, because I think that's not clear, right? And people keeps failing off because they started with a company thinking they will go this direction, but in reality they are going to the other direction.
And I think that when there are changes within a company, having a well-defined purpose for your company, understanding that why helps you through those transitions, and it helps you better quantify and understand competition that's in your market and how you work with partners and customers. So one of the important things about starting with why is, especially for the robotics companies that you and I work with, Jessica,
Mhm.
the why isn't to create this cool technology or create a robot that dances well. The why always connects to a higher purpose. And I've seen this with companies where their why is laser focused on solving a problem. And when they start solving that problem, the what and the how is clear to start with, right? They know what it's going to take to solve that problem and how they're going to solve that problem. And as their company develops, a new solution presents itself. And that's what drives the pivoting of the business is they don't change the why to fit the product they developed. They change their product and their company to focus on the purpose that that company is there for.
I 100% agree. And I think I always have been very customer centric. Like I love thinking on that because if you have your why, then it's easier for you to understand who is your customer, right? What are you gonna think on what is the pain point that you are gonna try to solve? And start creating or developing your product around the why, who, and how. Um, and if you don't have these points, is what I always call it, like you're gonna create a Frankenstein, right? A monster that is just here and there because everybody is telling you it should be doing this, it should be doing that, should be focused more on your software stack, should we focus more in the hardware stack? Like what is really gonna be your focus? And you really need to understand that from the beginning because if no, it's also more expensive at the end for everybody, and you ended up not having a real product. Robotics, building a robotics company, it's I always have say because I have been working in the tech space a lot with software, and it's so much different than software, right? You are here actually putting software or AI into hardware. So understanding what it takes to make a company and understanding the why, it helps you to have a less problems in the long term.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it helps with that commercialization and getting your product out there when you're developing new product also. I was working with a company that was developing technology for firefighting, right? Their why was very strong. The why was clear. We want to save lives, right? There's too many emergency workers, firefighters in particular, that lose their lives and don't need to. And so the company's why was to save lives. And one of the ways that they were doing that is through the development of robotic systems. But because their why was so clear, when it comes to decisions or changes to the products or iteration, they were focused on that why. And it's not we need to make this technology better. It's this technology is there to save lives. And that is really what drove their strategy, their focus, and it helped align their team as well as align their partners and customers for that end product to be able to deploy it faster and make that product successful. But at the same time, if that product didn't work out, that why hadn't changed and there's other ways to solve that problem. So once that first product line is done and in production, that why helps you pivot to what's next for the company. What's the next thing to be developed? That why really helps define who your company is, who your customers are, and how you need to get from A to B.
Yep. And talking about also marketing and all that, it helps you to create a real framework about the messaging that you are delivering. Because if you don't understand your why, everything gets reflected in everything, even from the logo, right? Your logo speaks about who you're talking to. The website that you develop is the same who you are trying to attract, right? And of course, there are different stages when you are building a company, who is the messaging for, but also it needs to be a very clear why to make sure that all your marketing messaging aligns, which again comes from the internal part, go now outside, right? When people is gonna think about your company and making business with you, or being your partners, they need to also understand this from the outside. And I have seen again where it's funny, right? But sometimes we don't even think like a color in your brand might make a difference in who are you trying to talk to, right? The font that you are using, what is trying to say. And these little details, sometimes it's funny that people don't think about it, right? Again, I'm an engineer by background, and I have been working with a lot of engineers who are too smart. But of course, thinking about in these little details is hard for them, right? They understand technology, they understand how to solve a problem, how to make this better. This other part of the messaging and understanding the why sometimes is difficult. And this is where I love working with a lot of funders, because it's not just about helping them to think about their technology or the mission of the company, but also like what is the messaging that you are going to be delivering, right? When people ask you about your company, what is that? Uh, what does that mean for, for people that is going to partner with you?
So, Jessica, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell me your why for Robo Success.
So I think exactly when I was thinking in everything there, I thought in too many things. First of all, who I'm talking to, right? And of course, I have been working with robotics companies for almost all my career with funders, people who started. And Robo Success understands that a lot of the times funders have this problem. They are founding a company, they are starting to do, the idea, creating the concept, but they don't have also the budget to go to hire a full-time person or go into a marketing agency that is going to charge them a lot of money. But they still need to start delivering that message and understanding who is listening to that message, right? So founding Robo Success was trying to help these founders. So the Robo, of course, is because I'm targeting all the robotics companies. The success is because we want to make them successful, to go to the next stage, to be able to grow, right? And grow with them. The logo, of course, represents the little cute face is because we want to work with the robotics companies. We want to identify with them. The color, definitely, I would say that it was kind of more personal, to be honest. I love purple. And I know also the colors that we select are part of the colors that are now identifying with the technology. Actually, we went through a change of colors because the first logo, it was very about me. It was all about me. You see that color and it's like you think about Jessica. And as I keep scaling, it was like, no, I don't want people to come to say, I want to work with Jessica. I want to work with Robo Success, right? I want to work with my company. And then I need to change that, need to do some changes. And that's also good, to learn that your company is going to keep scaling and learning. From the beginning, the mission has been very clear for me, helping, funders in the robotics industry to make successful marketing campaigns, customer success strategies. But as we keep evolving and keep having different use cases and different projects, we also need to change how we are defining ourselves. And that is like any other human, right? You start with a baby and the baby looks at some way. You don't look the same that you were looking 10 years ago. You change. You probably even sometimes change your style of how you dress. But one thing that you need to make sure is that your mission or your goals keep always aligned to everything that is happening around you. If you want to be an executive, you start talking and dressing as an executive, right? You don't change that, but that's how you start defining even your personal brand. And it's very similar for a company.
Yeah, and that's what I love about Robo Success is I think our why is clear, right? Robo Success exists to help the founders to make their products, their companies successful. And what I love about Robo Success is we get to help founders to define their why early on, and then we help them bring their product to reality, bring their, launch their company, get found funding, and we help drive them towards their why. What I really enjoy about Robo Success is our why is clear. We are here to help founders, and the most impactful way that we can help them today is through their marketing. But really, the why is we want to help early stage founders to develop their company and to get funding for their company. Most of the time that turns into branding, but we have a lot of clients that we help them to define their why. We give them feedback to help them refine their company, and we've even helped align them to other partners and other customers to help their company scale. Because at its core, Robo Success is there to help founders be successful.
Yep.
And one of the reasons that I really enjoy Robo Success is we have a clearly defined why. We're there to help the founders. The founders that we work with, they also have a very clearly defined why. They know what they're going after, and we get to be there to help their company meet that demand, enter the market, and define new spaces and new products and new technologies that are finding new ways to answer old questions.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we help, or that I love helping is the funders build the technology, develop, the why and the product. But really, the customers buy the outcomes, right? You really need to speak on what the customer is really buying. And sometimes it's hard sometimes to identify that or how to really explain it, especially because we have worked with customers who their products are very technical, right? And they need to try how to put all that technical words in the specific way the stakeholder will understand what they are purchasing for. And I always have been talking about this, like it's not just about thinking who is going to buy your product, but also who is going to really use your product. Because especially in the robotics industry, doesn't mean it's the same person. So you really need to make sure that in each stage of all the customer journey, you are actually going to be working with different kind of customers in the same for the same client, and you really need to understand each of them and how to line the why and the messaging for each of them to understand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this ties into basic principles for selling, right? Is you need to identify those pain points. Your product needs to solve a problem and do that in a cost-effective way. And if you have a strong why, your clients should align to that why, right? Because you're both focused on the same pain point, solving the same problem, and it should work out for everybody. I think you touched on something. There's a few industries that I've worked in where that chain gets broken. I worked once on developing a technology for trains, right? Trains are they've been around forever. There's almost it's really hard to develop new technology for locomotives. And one of the problems is because that Y chain is broken and the operators that are working on locomotives do not own those locomotives. And it's someone else who owns them and is responsible for paying for any upgrades. So that Y link gets broken between the company who has a great vision and the users of the platform that share that vision, but now there's a third party entity involved that doesn't share that why. And so I think successful companies understand what that chain of custody of their messaging looks like, and they need to make sure that everyone in that chain is aligned to the same why, the same messaging, and that goes into your marketing as well as your customer discovery and throughout your entire company and operations.
Yep, absolutely. And it's important to sometimes even slow down. I always say to, the customers, like, I know sometimes we feel the pressure of, oh, I need to get this done tomorrow and get it ready. I want to do this press release, or I want to really, because this other company is also doing something similar. And is that worthy, right? To accelerate something instead of to take a break and think if it really fits with your mission and on your why, and why are you saying this, right? A lot of times I have seen companies getting in trouble trying to fit or compete with other companies that are probably in the same market and trying to replicate what they are doing. And it's like, no, this is not you. You need to remember your why, right? And yes, probably it seemed like the other person keeps getting more traction or growing, but focus, right? Focus on the end line that is just for you instead of trying to compete.
Yeah, well, go back to my example of highlighting Apple and their why. How many companies have tried to mimic Apple, right? Or recreate the styling? And it's a misalignment of the why. Their why might be, oh, Apple makes a lot of money. I can make products like that. But that doesn't align to the customer needs. And that's where all of this comes together of, who are your customers? What is that pain point? And what does that whole business operation look like? And asking yourself why and identifying that why that aligns with your customers and your market helps you better define it so that you're not constantly chasing the competition. You're not trying to one up your peers. You're not trying to create a better widget that ultimately is going to fail because there's no need for it in the marketplace.
Yep, I agree. Well, Andy, I think this has been an amazing conversation, right? I hope this podcast helps a lot of the founders, so a lot of the ones who are thinking going into founding a company. I know now a lot of people is trying to say, hey, I know I can do this better. I know I can create this technology. And I'm excited to see what is coming for the robotics industry, because I think we are just seeing the beginning of what is possible, and this industry is going to keep growing.
I agree. And I love doing these podcasts and focusing on these, I almost want to call them micro topics, right? It makes me think about what I am doing and how I'm interacting with my clients. And it makes me rethink who my clients are and what their why is. So I would really like to hear back from the community, and I want to hear what people think. What is their why statement for their company, and how are they working to achieve that?
I love that. Thank you, Andy, for joining again this podcast with me and co-hosting. Thank you, everybody who is listening. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jesse.